My own son raised his hand against me, in my own kitchen. He hurt me in a way I never imagined he was capable of, and all because I refused to give him $55,000 from my retirement fund. $55,000 that took me 40 years to save, penny by penny. I was there at the kitchen table, organizing my bills for the month, when Marcus came home. It was about 7:30 in the evening on a regular Tuesday. He came in through the back door with that look I knew all too well. That look of someone who's being chased by debt collectors, someone who's desperate. He threw his backpack on the floor and just stood there, staring at me. I had just opened a letter that had come in the mail, a final notice. $18,500 in his name. $18,500 I didn't even know existed. I held up the letter and asked, "Marcus, what is this?" He didn't even blink. He just walked across the kitchen and tried to snatch the paper out of my hand. I held it tight and repeated, "What is this? $18,500? What did you spend $18,500 on?" That's when he exploded. He started screaming that I didn't understand anything about his life, that I didn't understand the pressure he was under, that he had lost his job, that the divorce had ruined him. And then he dropped the bomb. He said, "Mom, I need that $55,000 from your retirement fund. Now, I'm going to invest in a franchise business that's going to solve everything." I took a deep breath. I looked at him and told the truth. "Marcus, that franchise story doesn't work on me. I know you owe money. I know you're betting online, and I am not going to cash out 40 years of work for you to throw away on gambling." His face changed. His jaw tightened, the veins in his neck popped out, and he took a step toward me. He blocked my path right there in the kitchen and said, with a low, dangerous voice, "You're going to make that transfer now. On your phone. Now." I looked him in the eye and said firmly, "I didn't work my whole life to fund your irresponsibility." That was the moment he completely lost control. Marcus grabbed both my arms tight. I felt his hands squeezing, hurting. He started screaming in my face that the money was going to be his one day anyway, that I was being selfish, that I was a horrible mother for letting her own son sink. I tried to pull away, but he squeezed even harder. He tried to grab my phone that was on the table. I held the phone against my chest and said, "Take your hands off me, Marcus, now." He didn't. He pushed me. He pushed me hard against the sink counter. I lost my balance completely. My back hit first, then my head hit the tile wall. I felt a sharp pain shooting up my spine. I tried to steady myself, but my legs gave out. And then he did something I will never, ever forget. He raised his right hand and slapped me across the face. A hard, violent slap that cut the inside of my lip. I tasted blood in my mouth immediately. I fell to the kitchen floor, dazed, my vision blurry. Marcus stood there, breathing heavy, looking down at me on the floor. For a second, I saw something in his eyes. Maybe a flash of regret, maybe fear of what he had just done. But it lasted less than 2 seconds. He turned around, walked to the kitchen door, and stopped. Without looking back, he said with a cold voice, "I'm going to my room. By tomorrow morning, I want to see that transfer done. $55,000 in my account. If it's not there, things are going to get much worse for you." And then he went upstairs. I heard his bedroom door slam, and the house went silent. I stayed there on the kitchen floor, hand on my face, feeling the blood trickle down my chin. My lip was swelling up fast. My head was throbbing. My back hurt so bad I could barely move. But you know what the first thing that went through my mind was? It wasn't sadness. It wasn't shock. It was a cold, mathematical phrase that echoed in my mind like an equation being solved. He crossed the line. It's over. I got up slowly, holding onto the counter. I went to the sink, wet a towel, and wiped the blood off my face. I looked at my reflection in the small mirror that hangs near the fridge. My lip was cut on the inside and already starting to swell. It was going to turn purple. It was going to be very visible. Perfect. I grabbed my phone, sat on the chair at the table, and started to think. Not with emotion, with logic. Marcus had just physically assaulted me and financially extorted me. He had threatened to make things worse if I didn't hand over $55,000. $55,000 he was going to use to pay gambling debts, to cover lost bets, to feed an addiction that was destroying him, and he thought I would accept it. He thought beating his own mother would break me, that fear would make me give in. He didn't know the woman he had just hit. But for you to understand how I reached this absurd point, where my own son raised his hand against me for money, let me introduce myself properly and tell you how it all started. My name is Catherine Williams. I'm 66 years old, and I live in a brick bungalow on the south side of Chicago, Illinois. I'm a retired math teacher. I worked 40 years in the Chicago public school system. 40 years teaching algebra, geometry, trigonometry to hundreds and hundreds of boys and girls who passed through my classrooms. I was always known as the tough teacher, the teacher who didn't pass anyone for free, the teacher who demanded respect, punctuality, and effort. But I was also the teacher who stayed after class to explain it again, who bought snacks for students who came in hungry, who went to houses to talk to parents when I saw something was wrong. I cared. I really cared. And you know why? Because I came from the bottom. The very bottom. I was born in 1959, right here on the south side of Chicago, in a poor family. My father worked in a meatpacking plant. My mother cleaned rich people's houses on the north side. We lived in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment where 6 people slept. I shared a bed with my 2 younger sisters. We had nothing. But my mother repeated one thing every single day. Education is the only thing no one can take away from you. Study. Study until your eyes hurt. And that's what I did. I studied. I excelled in math from a young age. Numbers made sense to me in a way words didn't. Equations were logical, predictable, fair. If you did everything right, the answer always came. There were no tricks, no lies, just work and results. I got a scholarship to college. Graduated in mathematics education in 1981. Got my first job as a teacher at a public school in Inglewood, one of the toughest neighborhoods in Chicago. I was 22 and looked 15. The students tried to test me on the first day, but I set the rules. With respect, but with a firm hand. I taught at that school for 18 years. That's where I met my husband, James. He was a gym teacher, a good man, hardworking, funny. We got married in 1984. I was 25. We rented a small apartment, saved money for 5 years, and finally bought our first house in 1989. A red brick bungalow with 2 bedrooms, a tiny porch out front, and a backyard. It cost $89,000 back then. It seemed like a fortune, but we made it happen. Marcus was born in 1990, our only son. I was 31. James was 33. We wanted more children, but after 3 attempts that didn't work out, we accepted that Marcus would be an only child, and we poured all our love, all our energy, all our money into that boy. Marcus was a smart kid, very smart. He learned fast, was charismatic, made friends easily. But from a young age, he had a problem. He didn't like hearing no. If you told him he couldn't have something, he threw a tantrum, cried, screamed, stomped his feet. James had a hard time being firm with him. I was the disciplinarian of the house. I was the one who set limits, and Marcus always tested me. Adolescence was hard. Marcus started hanging out with some boys who were no good. Boys who smoked weed, skipped class, got into trouble. I tried to talk, tried to set rules, tried to get him off that path, but the tighter I held, the more he rebelled. James always asked me to go easier. He'd say, "Catherine, you're too hard on the boy. Let him breathe." But I knew. I knew if I let Marcus loose, he would get lost. I saw it every day at school. I saw smart boys with potential throwing it all away because no one held them back. When Marcus was 17, he got caught driving a friend's car without a license. The car had been stolen. Marcus swore he didn't know, that his friend said it belonged to his father. The police believed him because of our intervention. He got off with community service. James was devastated. I was furious. But Marcus? Marcus didn't seem to learn anything. He just got mad at me because I didn't hire an expensive lawyer to make the record disappear completely. Still, he graduated high school. James and I pushed him to college. He went to a community college, started studying business, but he dropped out in the 2nd year, said college was a waste of time, that he was going to make real money working in sales. And for a while, it seemed like he was right. Marcus got a job at a medical equipment company. He was a smooth talker, good at selling, started making good commissions, bought a new car, rented a nice apartment, met a girl named Tasha. They dated for 2 years and got married in 2015. James and I paid for half the wedding, $12,000. It was the only thing Marcus asked for that we gave without questioning. But the marriage didn't last. Tasha found out Marcus was spending their money on things he hid from her: online sports betting, online poker. She tried to make him stop. He promised he would stop, but he didn't. They separated in 2019. The divorce was finalized in 2023. Marcus had to sell the apartment, split everything. He was left with almost nothing. And then, in October 2023, James died. My husband had a massive heart attack while mowing the lawn in the backyard. I was inside making lunch. I heard a strange noise, ran outside, and found him lying on the grass. I called the ambulance, did CPR, begged him not to leave me. But he was already gone. 59 years old. A whole life of work, dedication, love. And out of nowhere, he was gone. I went into a deep depression. Spent months not knowing how to go on. Marcus showed up at the funeral, stayed a few days with me, and then disappeared again. He called every now and then, but it was always rushed, always with an excuse that he was busy with work. I had to pick myself up alone. Went back to therapy, went back to church, started going out with my friends again. Slowly, very slowly, I started living again. The house was paid off after James's life insurance paid the rest of the mortgage. Today the house is worth $460,000. I also have my retirement fund, my teacher's pension, and some government bonds I've been accumulating over 40 years. In total, I have assets of about $700,000. It's not a fortune, but it's enough for me to live with dignity, travel a little, help whoever I want to help, and leave something for my son when I die. When? Not before. Marcus lost his job in March 2024. The medical equipment company he worked for did a round of layoffs, and he was cut. He called me crying, saying he was desperate, that he didn't know how he was going to pay the rent on the new apartment he had just leased. I offered help, sent him $1,500 to cover 2 months of rent while he looked for another job. But months went by and Marcus didn't find anything. He said he was sending resumes, going to interviews, but nothing ever came of it. In June 2024, he called me again. Said he was going to be evicted, that he didn't have money, even for food. I asked where his unemployment checks were going. He went silent and then said he used them to pay some overdue bills. I knew he was lying. But even so, I offered, "Marcus, come live with me for a while, until you get back on your feet. But with rules. You're going to look for a job every day. You're going to help with household expenses when you get work. And you're not bringing any trouble into my house." He accepted right away. Marcus arrived in June 2024 with 2 suitcases of clothes and a backpack. I set up the guest room for him, made it clear this was temporary. 3 months, maximum 6. He promised he'd be out soon, that he just needed a little push. The first few days, he actually helped. Washed dishes, took out the trash, mowed the lawn. But after 2 weeks, he started to slack off. Stayed up late in his room, on his phone, slept until noon. When I asked if he had sent resumes, he got irritated and said I was nagging him. And then I started noticing strange things. Small amounts missing from my wallet. $50 here, $40 there. I wasn't sure at first. Thought I was forgetful, that I had spent it and didn't write it down. But then I started marking the bills, counting exactly before going to sleep. And I confirmed it. Marcus was taking money from me. I confronted him. He denied it. Swore he hadn't taken anything. Got so indignant, so offended, that I almost believed him. Almost. And then, in August, I discovered he had made transfers from my checking account without me knowing. I had given him access to my computer once for him to print a document. He must have seen my saved passwords in the browser. On 2 different occasions, he transferred money from my account to his. $900 one time, $1,300 the other, $2,200 in total. When I saw that on the bank statement, I felt my blood boil. I printed everything, gathered the proof, and waited for him to get home. When Marcus walked in, I was already at the table with the papers in front of me. I looked at him and asked, "Did you steal $2,200 from me?" He tried to deny it again, but I showed the statements, the dates, the times. Everything matched moments when only he was home. He couldn't deny it, so he changed strategy. Started crying, saying he was desperate, that he had debts I didn't know about, that collectors were threatening him. I took a deep breath and said, "Marcus, you are my son. I love you, but you stole from me. You went into my account and stole from me. That's not asking for help. That's a crime." He fell to his knees, literally on his knees in the kitchen, and begged me not to call the police. Promised he would pay me back. Promised he would change. I looked at him and felt a mix of pity and disgust. Pity for the broken man my son had become. Disgust for the cheap manipulation he was trying to use on me. I said, "I'm not calling the police, this time. But you're going to pay me back, every penny. And you're leaving this house by the end of the year. I'm not accepting lies anymore, Marcus, nor disrespect. This is your last chance." He agreed to everything. Hugged me. Said I was the best mother in the world. That he didn't deserve my kindness. And for a few weeks, he actually improved. Got a temp job at a warehouse, started giving me $200 a week. But then September came. And with September came that collection letter, $18,500. And that's when everything fell apart for good. On that Tuesday, September 24th, 2024, when Marcus hit me in the kitchen, I knew it was over. There was no turning back. No more last chance. My son had become a danger to me. A financial danger, a physical danger, and I needed to protect myself. So right there in that kitchen, with my face bleeding and my back hurting, I came up with a plan. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to pity myself. I wasn't going to accept being a victim. I was going to do what I always taught my students, solve the problem step by step, with logic, with precision, until getting the right answer. And the right answer in that case involved a few very specific phone calls. At 8:15 at night, I called Sylvia Carter's cell phone, my best friend for over 30 years. Sylvia is a retired public prosecutor, worked in Cook County for 25 years. Sylvia has no patience for lies, for manipulation, for men who hit women. She picked up on the second ring. I said, "Sylvia, I need you here, now." She heard the tone of my voice and asked, "What happened?" I replied, "Marcus hit me, and I'm going to need a witness, legal guidance, and someone to stop me from doing something stupid." Sylvia didn't ask any more questions. She said, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't touch anything. Take a picture of your face, now." I hung up, grabbed my phone, and took 3 pictures of my face. The cut and swollen lip, the start of the bruise on my cheek, my eye starting to turn red. I saved the photos in a separate folder. Then I called Sergeant Daniel Robinson. Danny was my student in high school back in 1998. He was a shy boy, struggled with math, but hardworking. I stayed after school with him for a whole year until he passed the final exam. He never forgot. When he became a cop, he came to visit me at school to say thank you, said I had changed his life. Since then, we keep in touch. He calls me at Christmas, on my birthday, on Mother's Day. I called his personal cell. He answered, "Mrs. Catherine, is everything okay?" I said, "Danny, I need your help. My son assaulted me at home tonight. He threatened me financially, and I need to file a police report tomorrow morning. But I also need you to be present, because I don't trust how this might escalate." There was a silence. Then Danny said, with a different voice, a cop voice, "Mrs. Catherine, are you hurt? Do you need an ambulance?" I replied, "I don't need an ambulance, but I need justice." Danny took a deep breath and said, "I'll be there tomorrow at 8 in the morning, with 2 other officers. We're going to handle this the right way." I thanked him and hung up, and then I called the bank, the emergency service available 24 hours a day. Explained that I suspected fraudulent activity on my account. Asked to temporarily freeze all my checking and savings accounts, allowing only in-person transactions with ID. The attendant confirmed and said the block would be effective within 2 hours. I hung up the phone and finally let the tears fall. But they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of anger, of disappointment, of mourning for the son I had lost a long time ago and whom I was finally accepting would never come back. Sylvia arrived at 8:35. She came in through the front door, hugged me tight, and took me to the living room couch. She examined my face carefully, took more photos, wrote everything down in a little notebook she always carries. Then she sat in front of me and asked, "Tell me everything, from start to finish. Leave nothing out." And I told her. Told her about the lies, about the stolen money, about the collection letter, about the demand for $55,000, about the assault. Sylvia listened in silence, taking notes. When I finished, she closed the notebook and said, "Catherine, you know this is domestic battery and financial exploitation of an elderly person, right?" I blinked. Financial exploitation of an elderly person? I'm 65. I'm not elderly. She smiled humorlessly. In the eyes of Illinois law, anyone over 60 can be considered vulnerable in cases of financial abuse by family members. And Marcus didn't just try to extort you. He used physical violence to do it. This is serious, Catherine. Very serious. I swallowed hard. What do I do? Sylvia leaned forward. Tomorrow morning, when Danny arrives with the officers, you file the formal police report. You hand over the bank statements showing the previous thefts. You show the photos. You ask for an emergency order of protection. And you evict him from your house. Legally. With police witness. I felt my heart squeeze. What if he resists? Sylvia looked me in the eye and said firmly, "Then he gets arrested." Catherine, listen to what I'm going to tell you. You can love your son, but you cannot sacrifice yourself for him. He crossed every line, every single one. And if you don't stop him now, he will destroy you, financially, emotionally, and maybe even physically. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and finally accepted the truth I had been denying for months. My son had become my enemy. Sylvia slept on the couch that night. She didn't want to leave me alone. We stayed up late talking, planning every step of the next day. When I finally went to my room, it was past midnight. I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the house. Around 2 a.m, I heard Marcus come down the stairs to go to the bathroom. He passed in front of my bedroom door, stopped, stood there for a few seconds. I held my breath. Then he went on to the bathroom, went back to his room, and the house went silent again. I looked at the clock. 6 hours until sunrise. 6 hours until justice arrived. I took a deep breath and waited. The clock showed 6:45 in the morning when I got up. I hadn't managed to sleep much at all. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the scene repeating. Marcus pushing me, the taste of blood in my mouth, his cold threat before going up the stairs. I got up, went to the bathroom, and looked in the mirror. My God! My lip was swollen, purple on the edge. A purple bruise had formed on my left cheek during the night. My left eye was slightly red. I looked exactly like what I was, a woman who had been beaten. I washed my face carefully, ran a comb through my hair, and got dressed. Black dress pants, white long-sleeve blouse, closed shoes. I wanted to look dignified, composed, in control. I went downstairs slowly. Sylvia was already awake in the living room, sitting on the couch, on her phone. She looked at me and nodded. "Good morning." "How are you?" I replied. "Standing. That's what matters." Sylvia got up and came to the kitchen with me. We made coffee in silence. Toast, butter, jam. Everything very normal, very ordinary, as if this were just another day. But it wasn't. At 7:45, I heard Danny's car park in front of the house. I looked out the living room window and saw him get out of the squad car with 2 more uniformed officers. Danny was in uniform too. Serious. Professional. Sylvia opened the door before he even knocked. They came in, and Danny came straight to me. He looked at my face, and I saw his jaw clench. He said in a low voice, "Mrs. Catherine, did he do this to you?" I could only nod. Danny turned to the other 2 officers and said something I couldn't hear properly. Then he turned back to me and asked, "Is he home right now?" I replied, "He's in his room, upstairs." Danny nodded. "We're going to wait for him to come down. You're going to do exactly what we agreed on, okay?" I took a deep breath. "Okay." Sylvia pulled out a chair for me at the kitchen table. I sat down. The 3 officers positioned themselves strategically. One in the living room, Danny near the stairs, the other at the kitchen entrance. We waited, and then, at 8:10 in the morning, I heard it. Footsteps upstairs, the bedroom door opening, Marcus coming down the stairs. I heard him whistling, as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't assaulted me less than 12 hours ago. He reached the bottom of the stairs and turned toward the kitchen, stopped in the doorway, looked at the table, saw me sitting there, and smiled. He smiled. Marcus walked into the kitchen, grabbed a piece of toast from the plate in the center of the table, and said, "Morning, Mom. So, we managed to settle that matter, right? $55,000. I saw you haven't blocked me at the bank yet, so I'm going to need you to—" That's when he saw Sylvia. Sylvia was sitting at the other end of the table, with a black folder in front of her. She didn't say anything. She just looked at him with that face I knew very well, the prosecutor face. The face of someone who has seen hundreds of criminals and knows exactly what each of them is. Marcus's smile faltered. He looked at Sylvia and asked, "Who are you?" Sylvia didn't answer. She just opened the folder and started organizing papers. Marcus looked at me, confused. "Mom, who is this woman? What's going on here?" Before I could answer, Danny appeared behind him. Marcus turned around and came face to face with the police uniform. The color drained from his face. He took a step back and said, "What the hell is this? You called the police? Why?" I stood up slowly, looked my son in the eye, and said with the firmest voice I could muster, "Because you assaulted me, because you stole from me, and because you threatened me." Marcus let out a humorless laugh. "Assaulted? Mom, we just had an argument. You're exaggerating. I never assaulted you." Danny took a step forward and said, "Sir, could you sit down, please?" Marcus looked at Danny, then at me, then at the other two officers who had now also entered the kitchen. He realized he was surrounded. He pulled out a chair and sat down, but I could see the anger growing in his eyes. Sylvia finally spoke. She placed a document on the table in front of Marcus and said, "My name is Sylvia Carter. I am a retired public prosecutor and a longtime friend of Catherine's. And you, Marcus Williams, are in a very serious situation." Marcus looked at the paper and then at Sylvia. "Serious situation? What are you talking about?" Sylvia flipped a few more papers in the folder. She pulled out the bank statements I had printed days ago, the unauthorized transfers, $2,200. She placed the statements in front of him. "In August of this year, you illegally accessed your mother's bank account and transferred, without authorization, $2,200 to your personal account. That is theft, misappropriation, a crime." Marcus shook his head. No. I explained that to her. I needed the money. She understood. I'm going to pay it back." Sylvia didn't even blink. She pulled out another paper, the collection letter, $18,500. "You also accumulated $18,500 in debt, mostly related to online sports betting, and attempted to extort $55,000 from your mother's retirement fund to cover your losses." Marcus stood up from the chair, nervous. "Extort? I didn't extort anyone. I asked for help. What is the crime in a son asking his own mother for help?" That's when Sylvia pulled out her phone and placed it in front of him. The photos of my face, 3 photos, cut lip, purple cheek, red eye. "The crime, Marcus, is when you use physical violence to get that help. Last night, around 7:30, you grabbed your mother by the arms, pushed her against the kitchen counter, and slapped her across the face, cutting her lip. Afterward, you threatened that if she didn't transfer $55,000 by this morning, things were going to get much worse. That is not asking for help. That is domestic battery and extortion." The silence in the kitchen was deafening. Marcus stood there, looking at the photos. For a second, I saw something on his face. Shame, maybe, or fear. But then he changed completely. He turned to me, pointed his finger, and yelled, "You're making this up. You're lying to them. We had an argument, yes, but I never laid a hand on you. Never." I felt the tears burn in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I looked at him and said, "Marcus, you hit me. You pushed me. You hurt me. And you know you did." He shook his head frantically. No, that's a lie. She fell. She tripped and fell. I didn't do anything." Danny took another step forward. He spoke with that calm but firm voice of an experienced cop. "Mr. Williams, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney." Marcus interrupted. Wait. You're arresting me because of her lie?" Danny continued, impassive. "If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. Do you understand these rights?" Marcus turned to me, desperate. Mom, for God's sake, tell them this is a misunderstanding. Tell them you don't want to do this. I'm your son." I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and when I opened my eyes again, I said the hardest thing I've ever had to say in my life. "You are my son, but you hurt me, and I'm not going to let you do that again." Marcus's face twisted in rage. He took a step toward me and shouted, "You ungrateful bitch! After everything He didn't finish the sentence. Danny and the other 2 officers acted fast. They grabbed Marcus by the arms, turned him around, and cuffed him. Marcus started screaming, cursing, struggling. But it was no use. Danny looked at him and said, "Marcus Williams, you are under arrest for domestic battery and attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable person. You will be taken to the South District Station for processing." They started leading Marcus out of the kitchen. He turned to me one last time, face twisted with hate, and spat the words, "You're going to regret this. You're going to die alone in this house. Alone! And when you die, I'm going to sell everything and throw your ashes in the trash." And then they took him away. I heard the front door slam, heard the squad car start, heard the sound fading down the street. And then I broke down. I collapsed into the chair and started crying like I hadn't cried since the day James died. Sylvia came to me, hugged me tight, and let me cry on her shoulder. She didn't say anything, just stayed there, holding me, while I let out all the pain, all the disappointment, all the anger I had held in for months. After a while, I don't know how long, I finally stopped crying, wiped my face, looked at Sylvia and said, "What now?" Sylvia pulled the chair next to me and held my hand. "Now we protect you, legally, financially, emotionally." She opened the folder again and started explaining the next steps. The emergency order of protection that would stop Marcus from coming near me for at least 30 days. The hearing that was going to happen in a few days to determine if the order would be extended. The criminal case the state of Illinois was going to open against him for domestic battery. "And there's one more thing, Catherine," Sylvia said. "Serious. You need to protect your assets. Now. Because when Marcus gets out of jail, and he will get out at some point, the first thing he's going to do is try again." I swallowed hard. "How do I do that?" Sylvia pulled a business card out of the folder. "I have a lawyer friend who specializes in estate planning. He can help you create a trust, change your will, ensure Marcus doesn't have access to your money while you're alive, and that he can't squander his inheritance when you pass." I took the card, looked at the name, Robert Chen, Esquimmer, Estate Planning and Elder Law. I looked at Sylvia and asked, "How much is this going to cost?" Sylvia smiled slightly. "Robert owes me a few favors. Leave it to me." That day, I didn't do anything else. Just sat on the couch, drank tea, and tried to process what had happened. Sylvia stayed with me the whole day. We ordered Chinese food for delivery, watched a silly movie on TV, tried to keep things normal, but nothing was normal. My son had been arrested, in front of me, for hitting me. How do we reach this point? That night, when I finally went to my room, I knelt by the bed and prayed. I prayed for strength, for wisdom, for forgiveness. Not forgiveness for Marcus, not yet, but forgiveness for myself, for all the times I had ignored the signs, had given one more chance, had believed his lies. I slept that night, finally, a heavy sleep, dreamless. When I woke up the next morning, Sylvia was already gone. She had left a note on the kitchen table. "Called Robert. He's going to call you today. Stay strong. You did the right thing. S." I folded the note and put it in the drawer. Then I went to the living room window, looked at the quiet street of my neighborhood, and thought, now begins the second part, protecting what is mine. The phone rang at 10:15 in the morning. I was sitting at the kitchen table, having my second cup of coffee, still trying to process the events of the last 24 hours. I looked at the unknown number on the screen. For a second, I thought about not answering. but something told me to answer. "Hello? Good morning. I'd like to speak with Mrs. Catherine Williams, please." The voice was male, polite, with a slight accent I couldn't place. "This is she. Mrs. Williams, my name is Robert Chen. I'm an attorney specializing in estate planning. Sylvia Carter contacted me and explained your situation. I'd like to schedule a consultation with you as soon as possible. Are you available this afternoon?" I blinked, surprised. "This afternoon? Already?" "Yes, ma'am. In cases like yours, time is essential. The faster we act, the better protected you will be." I took a deep breath. "Okay, what time? Does 3 in the afternoon work for you? I can come to your house if you prefer. Or you can come to my office in the Loop." I thought for a moment. The idea of leaving the house, of going downtown to Chicago, gave me some anxiety. But staying home didn't feel right either. I needed to act, needed to move. "I'll come to your office," I said. "Give me the address." Robert gave me the address. A commercial building on South Clark Street. I wrote it all down, thanked him, and hung up. 3 in the afternoon. I had 4.5 hours to get ready, take the train, and get there. I went up to my room, took a long shower, and dressed carefully. Dark gray business suit, white blouse, low heels. I wanted to look professional, in control, even if inside I was falling apart. I applied makeup carefully, trying to cover the bruise on my cheek and the swelling of my lip. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. At 2:15, I left the house, locked everything carefully, turned the key twice, tested the door 3 times. I was still nervous, afraid that Marcus might appear somehow, even knowing he was arrested. I took the train at the 95th Street station. The train was reasonably empty for a weekday afternoon. I sat on a seat near the window and watched the city go by. Chicago is a tough city, but it's my city. I was born here, grew up here, built my life here, and I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my own son, take me out of here. I arrived in the Loop at 2:50. Robert's office was on the 12th floor of a glass and steel building. I got in the elevator, pressed the button, and waited. The doors opened into a small but elegant reception area. Light gray walls, modern furniture, well-kept plants in the corners. A young woman at the desk looked up and smiled. "Good afternoon. Do you have an appointment?" "I do. Catherine Williams, 3 o'clock with Mr. Chen." She checked the computer and nodded. "Perfect. Mr. Chen is already expecting you." "This way, please." She led me down a short hallway to a room with a frosted glass door, knocked twice, opened it, and motioned for me to enter. Robert Chen stood up from behind the desk. He was a Chinese-American man of about 50, black hair with white strands at the temples, thin-rimmed glasses, impeccable navy blue suit. He extended his hand with a warm smile. "Mrs. Williams, it's a pleasure to meet you. Sylvia spoke very highly of you." I shook his hand and sat in the chair he indicated. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice." Robert sat back in his chair and picked up a folder that was already open on the desk. "Sylvia explained your situation to me. I read everything she sent, and I want you to know right now we are going to solve this. We are going to protect your assets and ensure nothing like what happened happens again." I felt a lump in my throat. "Thank you." Robert opened the folder and started reviewing documents. "Let's start with the basics. Do you have a will?" "I do. I made a simple will when my husband died, almost 2 years ago. And in that will, is Marcus the sole beneficiary?" I nodded. "Yes, he's my only son. I have no one else." Robert made a note. "Okay, and what are your total assets? House, investments, bank accounts, retirement?" I took a deep breath. "The house is worth $460,000, fully paid off. I have about $130,000 in retirement funds, plus about $80,000 in government bonds, and about $15,000 in savings. In total, about $700,000, give or take." Robert nodded, showing no surprise. "Understood. And does Marcus know about all this?" "He knows I have the house, and he knows I have some savings, but he doesn't know exactly how much." Robert leaned forward, clasped his hands on the desk, and looked me in the eye. "Mrs. Williams, I'm going to be very direct with you. If your current will remains as it is, and if you were to pass away, Marcus would inherit everything. $700,000, cash, all at once, Considering his history with gambling, debt, and lack of financial control, how long do you think that money would last? I closed my eyes. 6 months, maybe a year. Exactly. And that's not all. If Marcus has unrestricted access to this money now, he might try to force you to make changes to the will, to sign powers of attorney, to transfer assets. And if he's desperate enough, he might try even worse things. I felt a chill down my spine. So what do? Robert picked up a pen and started drawing a simple diagram on a piece of paper. We are going to create a trust, a revocable trust, controlled by you while you are alive, which converts into an irrevocable trust when you pass away. In the trust, you define exactly how the money will be distributed, not in a lump sum, but in controlled monthly payments. I looked at the diagram. How so? Robert explained patiently. Let's say you put the $700,000 into the trust. When you pass away, the trust doesn't hand everything over to Marcus at once. Instead, the trust appoints a trustee, a reliable administrator, who will manage the money and make monthly payments to Marcus. For example, $2,000 a month, or $3,000, whatever amount you decide. I started to understand. So he never has access to the total money? Exactly. The money stays invested, generating income. The trustee pays his essential bills, rent, food, electric, water. But he can't withdraw everything and spend it on nonsense, and furthermore, you can set conditions. Conditions? Robert nodded. Yes. For example, Marcus only receives payments if he is sober, if he goes to therapy, if he proves he isn't gambling. If he violates any of these conditions, payments are suspended until he gets back on track. I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Hope. And is this legal? Can I do this? Robert smiled. Absolutely. It's called an incentive trust, or spendthrift trust. It's a perfectly valid legal tool to protect beneficiaries who have problems with addiction or financial management. I took a deep breath. And how much does it cost to create this? Robert closed the folder. Normally, a trust of this type costs between $3,000 and $5,000. But Sylvia is an old friend and has helped me on several cases over the years. I'll do it for you for $1,500, everything included. I blinked. $1,500? Yes, ma'am. And I can have everything ready by the end of the week. I couldn't hold back the tears. They started to flow, and I quickly wiped them with the back of my hand. Thank you. Thank you so much. Robert grabbed a box of tissues from the desk and offered it to me. No need to thank me. That's what we're here for. For the next 40 minutes, Robert asked me a series of questions. Who I wanted to name as trustee, what specific conditions I wanted to include, what monthly amount I thought was fair. I chose Sylvia as trustee. She was the only person I trusted completely. Robert explained she could refuse, but that she would probably accept. The conditions were harder. I wanted to help Marcus. I wanted him to have a decent life, but I also couldn't let him throw away everything I had built. After much thought, I decided. Monthly payment of $2,000 provided Marcus was employed or proving active job search. Direct rent payment up to a limit of $1,200 a month. Direct payment of medical and dental expenses. Direct payment of therapy and addiction treatment if necessary. Absolute ban on cash withdrawals. If Marcus violated any of these rules, payments suspended for 3 months. If violated again, suspended for 6 months. If violated a third time, suspended permanently, and the money goes to charities I chose. Robert noted everything down and nodded. That's solid, very solid. Marcus will have enough to live with dignity, but not enough to destroy himself. I agreed. It was exactly what I wanted. Robert asked me to sign some preliminary forms. He said he would draft the trust during the rest of the week, send me a draft to review, and we would finalize everything the following week. When I left his office, it was past 5 in the afternoon. I felt exhausted, but also relieved. I had taken the first concrete step to protect myself. I took the train back home. When I arrived on my street, it was already starting to get dark. I walked up the porch steps, opened the door, and went in. The house was empty, quiet. But it wasn't a bad silence. It was a peaceful silence. I made a simple dinner. Chicken soup with vegetables, toast, tea, sat at the kitchen table, alone, and ate slowly. After dinner, I called Sylvia, told her everything about the meeting with Robert, about the trust, about the conditions. Sylvia listened to everything and then said, "Catherine, you did the right thing. And yes, I accept being the trustee. Rest assured I'll take good care of this." I thanked her, we hung up, and I went to the couch, turned on the TV but didn't pay attention to anything that was playing. Just sat there thinking. 3 days later, on Saturday morning, I received a call from Sergeant Danny Robinson. "Mrs. Catherine, it's Danny. I have news about Marcus." My heart raced. What happened? He had his bail hearing yesterday. The judge set bail at $10,000. Marcus has no way to pay. So he's going to stay detained until the preliminary hearing, which is scheduled for 2 weeks from now. I felt a strange relief. So he can't get out. He can't. Not until he pays bail or until the hearing. And I need to warn you about something else. Marcus tried to call me from jail 3 times. I didn't answer. He's probably going to try calling you too. My stomach tightened. What if he calls? You are not obligated to answer, and if you answer, you have every right to hang up. The order of protection is still valid, so he cannot threaten or pressure you in any way. I thanked Danny and hung up. The next day, Sunday afternoon, the house phone rang. It was a number I didn't know. I answered. "Hello?" An automated voice said, "You have a collect call from an inmate at Cook County Jail. The inmate is Marcus Williams. Do you accept the call?" My finger hovered over the hang-up button, but something inside me said, "Answer. Hear what he has to say." I pressed the accept button. "Mom?" Marcus's voice. He sounded different, smaller, broken. "I'm here," I said. "Mom, please get me out of here. Please. I can't take it anymore. It's horrible here. There are dangerous people here. I'm scared. Please pay the bail. $10,000. Please." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Part of me wanted to give in, wanted to run to the bank, withdraw the money, and get my son out of that place. But I remembered the slap, the shove, the threat, the stolen money, the lies, everything. "Marcus," I said calmly, "I am not paying your bail." There was silence on the other end. Then he exploded. "What do you mean you're not paying? I'm your son. You have to get me out of here." "No, Marcus, I don't have to. You assaulted me. You stole from me. You threatened me. And now you are facing the consequences." "Consequences? Mom, this is hell. Do you want me to get raped, to get killed in here?" I felt guilt trying to suffocate me, but I fought against it. "Marcus, you are in a county jail, not a maximum security federal prison. You are safe, and you are going to stay there until the hearing. I don't believe you. You are the worst mother in the world. I hate you. You ruined my life. When I get out of here, you'll see. I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking. My heart was beating fast. But I had done it. I had said no, and I felt free. In the weeks that followed, my life turned into a strange routine. Every morning I woke up, made coffee, ate breakfast alone, and tried to maintain some normality. But nothing was normal. My son was in jail. I had an order of protection against him. And I was in the middle of a legal process I never imagined I'd face. Robert Chen worked fast. By the end of the first week, he sent me the full draft of the trust. I read everything carefully. It was a document of almost 20 pages, full of legal language I barely understood. But Robert had highlighted the most important parts: the conditions, the rules, the protection. I signed everything on a Thursday afternoon, at his office. Sylvia went with me as a witness. We signed, notarized, and that was it. My assets were protected. Robert also helped me with something else. He put me in touch with the bank to remove Marcus as a beneficiary from any account that had an automatic transfer in case of death. We changed everything. Now, if I died, the money went straight to the trust. It didn't pass through Marcus's hands. I felt lighter after that, but the peace was short-lived. On a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks after Marcus's arrest, I received a letter in the mail. I recognized the handwriting on the front of the envelope. It was his. I stared at the letter for a long time, not knowing whether to open it or not. Part of me wanted to tear it up and throw it away, but the other part, the part that was still a mother, needed to know what he had to say. I opened the letter. The handwriting was hurried, irregular. It looked like he had written it in anger, but trying to control himself. Mom, I know you're mad at me, and I understand. I ruined everything. Again. I know I have a problem. I know I need help. And I know you have no obligation to help me after what I did. But I'm writing to ask you one thing. Don't abandon me. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I was horrible to you. But you are the only person I have in the world. If you give up on me, I don't know what I'll do. I'm in therapy here. Mandatory therapy for everyone. And for the first time in my life, I'm actually listening. The therapist said I have a compulsive gambling disorder. Said it's a real disease, like alcoholism. I had never thought about it that way. I always thought I could control it, but I can't. I lost everything, Mom. My marriage, my job, my dignity, and I almost lost you, the only person who always believed in me. I'm not asking you to pay the bail. I know you won't, and I accept that, but I'm asking you not to give up on me completely. When I get out of here, I'll be different. I swear, I'll get treatment, I'll work, I'll pay back every cent I owe you. Please don't abandon me. Marcus. I folded the letter slowly and put it back in the envelope, sat at the kitchen table and stared at the wall for a long time. Was he being sincere, or was it just more manipulation? I didn't know, and that killed me inside. I called Sylvia, told her about the letter, read some parts to her. Sylvia listened in silence and then said, Catherine, I can't tell you what you should do, but I will tell you one thing. Words are easy. Actions are hard. Marcus has always been good with words. But his actions brought you here. I knew she was right. But what if he really is changing? I asked. What if jail really opened his eyes? Sylvia took a deep breath. Then you'll see it in his actions. Not now, not a month from now, but 6 months from now, a year. If he really changed, he'll prove it with consistency, not promises. I agreed. It was exactly what I needed to hear. I didn't answer the letter. Not yet. The preliminary hearing happened on a Friday, 3 weeks after the arrest. I went to court. Sylvia went with me. We sat in the back of the room, and I saw Marcus enter in handcuffs, wearing an orange jumpsuit from the jail. He was thinner, pale face, deep circles under his eyes. He looked at the audience, saw me, and our eyes met for a second. I couldn't read his expression. Sadness? Anger? Regret? The hearing was quick. The prosecutor presented the evidence, photos of my bruised face, bank statements showing the thefts, Sergeant Robinson's testimony. Marcus's public defender tried to argue it was an isolated domestic fight, that Marcus had no violent record, that he was going through a tough time. The judge heard everything and then made his decision. The case was going to trial. The date was set for 2 months from then. Marcus would remain in jail until then, unless he managed to pay bail. When the hearing ended, Marcus was taken back. Before leaving through the door, he turned and yelled, "Mom, please, don't do this to me." I didn't answer, just sat there, hands in my lap, trying not to crumble. After the hearing, Sylvia took me for coffee at a cafeteria near the courthouse. We sat in a quiet corner, and Sylvia held my hand. "How are you?" she asked. "I don't know," I replied honestly. Part of me feels relief, another part feels guilt, and another part is just exhausted. Sylvia squeezed my hand. "You did the right thing. Keep doing it." I agreed, but inside I was still full of doubt. That night when I got home, I found another letter from Marcus in the mailbox. This time, I didn't even open it. I kept it in a separate envelope and put it in the kitchen drawer, along with the first one. Maybe one day I'd read it, but not now. In the following weeks, I started rebuilding my life, slowly, step by step. I went back to attending church on Sundays, Our Lady of the Rosary, the Catholic church I had attended since moving to the neighborhood. Father Miguel, a Mexican man in his 60s, came to talk to me after Mass. He held my hands and said, "Catherine, I heard what happened. We are praying for you, and for Marcus too." I thanked him, but couldn't say much. The emotion was too much. I also went back to meeting my friends, a group of 4 retired teachers I had known for decades. We met every Wednesday afternoon to play cards and gossip. When I told them what had happened, they were shocked. But they didn't judge me, didn't question my decisions, just hugged me and said they would be there for whatever I needed. One of them, Dorothy, a 72-year-old black lady who had been a school principal, told me a similar story. Her son had also had problems with drugs and money. She had also needed to make tough decisions. Mother's love isn't giving them everything they ask for, she told me. Sometimes mother's love is saying no. It's setting boundaries, even when it hurts. Those words stayed with me. And then, on a Thursday afternoon, 4 weeks after Marcus's arrest, I received an unexpected call. It was a woman. She introduced herself as Tasha, Marcus's ex-wife. I froze. Tasha and I had never been close. She was always polite to me, but distant. After the divorce, we had lost contact completely. "Mrs. Catherine," she said, voice nervous, "I know it's weird for me to call, but I heard what happened with Marcus, and I needed to talk to you." "What do you want?" I asked, trying not to sound hostile. Tasha took a deep breath. "I want to apologize to you." I stayed silent, confused. "Apologize for what?" "For not warning you, for not telling you what was happening while we were still married. I knew he was betting. I knew he was hiding debts. But I was ashamed. I didn't want anyone to know. So I tried to solve it alone. And when I couldn't anymore, I just left." She paused. "But I should have told you. Because maybe if you knew sooner, you could have helped him in a different way. Or at least protected yourself." I felt the tears coming back. "Tasha, you don't have to apologize. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to see it." Tasha let out a sad sigh. "Marcus isn't a bad person, Mrs. Catherine. But he's sick. He has an addiction. And until he admits it and seeks real help, he's going to keep hurting everyone who loves him." We talked for another 20 minutes. Tasha told me details I didn't know. How Marcus had opened credit cards in both their names without her knowing. How he had bet the money they had saved for a down payment on a house. How he had lied countless times, always with a convincing excuse. When we hung up, I felt strangely validated. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just in my head. Marcus had a pattern of manipulation, lying, and financial destruction, and it was his responsibility to change, not mine. That night, I finally opened the second letter Marcus had sent. It was shorter than the first. "Mom, I know you didn't answer my first letter. I understand. But I needed to write again. The hearing was hard. Seeing you there, across the room, looking at me like I was a stranger, that hurt. Hurt a lot. But I deserve it. I know I deserve it. I've been thinking a lot in here. About everything I did. About everything I destroyed. And I realized something. I spent my whole life blaming everyone else for my problems. Blamed you for being hard on me. Blamed my dad for not defending me. Blamed Tasha for leaving me. Blamed my bosses for firing me. But the truth is, the problem was always me. I made bad choices. I lied. I stole. I hurt people who loved me. And now I'm paying for it. I don't know if you'll forgive me someday. Maybe not. And I'll have to accept that. But I want you to know one thing. Even if you never speak to me again, even if you write me out of the will, even if you decide it's over, I love you, and I'm sorry. For real. Marcus." I folded the letter and stored it with the other one. I still didn't know if I believed him, but for the first time, I saw a glimmer of something real there, something that wasn't manipulation. Maybe it was genuine regret. Maybe it was just another well-told lie. Only time would tell. Do you think that when the judge bangs the gavel and the cell door closes, the noise stops? No, honey. That's when the phone starts ringing. And it's not friends calling to ask how you are. It's the phone of debt collectors. It's the phone of people wanting money that doesn't exist. Marcus had gone to state prison to serve his time. The house was empty. But the mess he left behind, oh, that mess landed right in my lap. I was in the kitchen, about 10 days after the trial, trying to drink my tea in peace when the phone rang for the 5th time that morning. I had already stopped answering unknown numbers, but they were persistent, calling from different numbers, different area codes. This time, I answered. I needed to put an end to it. "Hello?" A man's voice, gruff and impatient, answered. "Is Marcus Williams there?" I took a deep breath and said, "Marcus doesn't live here anymore. And won't live here for the next 3 years." The man didn't even stutter. Continued his script. Ma'am, Mr. Williams has an outstanding debt of $4,600 with our Quick Credit Company. His address is listed as this residence. We need immediate payment or we'll have to initiate asset seizure proceedings. I felt that old anger rising, but this time I was prepared. I'm a math teacher, remember? I deal with facts. I replied with the coldest voice I could muster. Sir, listen closely to what I'm going to say, because I'm not going to repeat it. Marcus Williams is incarcerated at the Illinois State Penitentiary. He has no assets. He has no income. And this house here? This house is mine. It's in my name, Catherine Williams. His name is not on the deed, not on the bills, not anywhere. You lent money to a gambling addict with no collateral. That's your risk, not mine. The man tried to argue. But ma'am, as a family member you could... I cut him off right there. I could nothing. I'm not his co-signer. I didn't sign anything. If you call my house one more time, I'm going to report your company for harassment and violation of collection laws. His criminal case number is public. Go collect in jail. And I slammed the phone down. My hand was shaking a little, but I felt strong. Did they think they were going to intimidate me? They didn't know who they were dealing with. But that call made me realize something. I needed to clean the house, literally. I needed to go into the room where Marcus stayed and get everything out of there. I needed to see the real extent of the damage. I went up the stairs with a black trash bag in hand, stopped in front of the guest room door, took a deep breath and opened it. The smell was still there. Smell of a man, of cheap deodorant, and that sour smell of anxiety and sweat of someone who doesn't sleep well. The room was a mess. Clothes thrown on the floor, empty pizza boxes in a corner, papers scattered on the desk. I started gathering the clothes to wash and donate. Didn't want any of that in my house. While I was organizing the paperwork on the desk, I started to understand my son's mind in those last months. There were frantic notes, calculations of basketball game odds, numbers, arrows, lists of debts. Pay Igor, $2,000 by Friday. Visa, maxed out. MasterCard, minimum paid. It was the diary of desperation. I gathered all that and threw it in the trash bag. Didn't want to keep proof of his sickness. But then, when I went to clean the drawer of the bedside table, I found something that made my heart stop. It was a small yellow paper crumpled at the bottom of the drawer, a pawn shop receipt, dated 3 weeks before his arrest. I picked up the paper and read, Item, men's gold watch, Omega brand, engraving on back. Loan amount, $800. The floor disappeared beneath my feet. I had to sit on the bed because my legs gave out. James's watch. My husband, James, had received that watch when he completed 25 years of teaching at the school. It was his pride. It had an inscription on the back. To James, with love, Catherine, 1999. He used that watch only on special occasions. When he died, I kept it in a velvet box at the back of my closet, along with his cufflinks. I didn't even know it was gone. I didn't touch that box. It hurt too much. Marcus had gone into my room, had rummaged through my most sacred things, had taken the only valuable physical memory I had of his father, and had sold it for $800. $800 that he probably lost on an online bet in less than 10 minutes. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I felt a pain so deep, so sharp, it felt like someone had stuck a knife in my chest. That hurt more than the slap, hurt more than the money stolen from the account, because that wasn't money. That was memory. That was disrespect for his own father's memory. I looked at the receipt. The due date was 2 days from now. If I didn't redeem it by the day after tomorrow, the watch would be sold. I would lose it forever. I got up from that bed as if I had a spring, grabbed my purse, grabbed the receipt, ran down the stairs, got in my car, and drove. The pawn shop was in a neighboring district, on an ugly street full of bars on the windows. I walked in there, a 66-year-old lady, dressed in house clothes, holding that little yellow paper like it was a winning ticket. The man behind the counter, a bald guy with an unfriendly face, looked at me and at the paper. Picking up or renewing? He asked, uninterested. Picking up, I said. I want the watch back. He typed some numbers into the computer. With interest and late fees, it comes to $1,240. $800 turned into $1,240 in less than 2 months. Loan shark interest. But I wasn't going to argue. I took out my debit card. Run it. He took the card, ran it through the machine. I typed the PIN. Approved. He went to the back and came back with the blue velvet box. My box. He put it on the counter. I opened it. There it was. The golden watch, stopped in time. I turned the watch over and read the inscription. To James, with love. Then I cried. Right there, in front of that strange man, inside that pawn shop full of sad things from desperate people. I held the watch against my chest and cried of relief and sadness. I had recovered the watch, but I had lost another piece of the image I had of my son. I went back home with the watch on my wrist. It was huge on my arm, but I needed to feel its weight. That night, I wrote to Marcus. It wasn't a love letter. It wasn't a worried mother's letter. Marcus, today I cleaned the guest room. I found the pawn receipt. I went there and redeemed your father's watch. I paid $1,240 to get back what you stole for $800. I want you to know this. I want you, there in your cell, to think about what you did. You didn't just steal an object. You stole the memory of the man who raised you, who loved you, who taught you to ride a bike in that very backyard. I protected my money with the trust fund. Justice put you in prison. But this is between you and your conscience. And I hope, sincerely, that this shame burns inside you enough to transform you into someone decent. Don't write back to me this week. I don't want to read anything from you right now. Catherine. I put the letter in the mail the next morning. Time passed. Winter in Chicago was harsh that year. Lots of snow, lots of wind. I stayed home a lot, read a lot of books. Marcus obeyed. He didn't write that week, nor the next. It took a month for an answer to arrive. When it arrived, in January 2025, the letter was different. The handwriting was firmer, less scribbled. Mom, I received your letter about the watch. I have no defense, no excuse. When I took that watch, I told myself I was going to win the bet. Go back there, get the watch out, and put it back in the box before you noticed. That's what the addict tells himself all the time. I'm going to fix it. But we never fix it. We just break it more. I cried when I read your letter. Not out of self-pity, but out of shame. Deep shame. Dad didn't deserve that. You didn't deserve that. I'm working in the prison laundry now, making pennies an hour. But I'm saving. I know $1,200 is a lot of money, and it will take years earning what I earn here, but I will pay you back. I promise. Even if it's the first thing I do when I get out. Thank you for redeeming the watch. Thank you for saving Dad's memory, even when I tried to sell it. Marcus, I read that letter and felt peace, not joy, but peace. He didn't try to justify himself. He didn't blame the addiction as if it were a separate entity. He owned it. I told myself. It was a start. Months went by. Spring came. The ice melted. I continued my life. The trust fund was active and secure, managed by Sylvia. My accounts were shielded. I changed all the locks on the house, installed a monitored alarm system. I didn't live in fear, but I lived with caution. In May, I received an official notification from the state. Marcus was behaving well. He was attending all Gamblers Anonymous meetings inside the prison. He was working. His parole date was set for 4 months from then, in September. He would get out after serving 12 months of the total 3-year sentence, counting the time he had already been jailed before the trial. My heart raced when I read the date, September. Soon he would be on the street, and I needed to be ready. I scheduled lunch with Sylvia. He's getting out in September, Sylvia, I said, cutting my chicken. Sylvia wiped her mouth with the napkin and looked at me seriously. And we are ready. The trust is shielded. The restraining order is still valid unless you revoke it. Remember the agreement? He can't come near you without your written authorization. I know, I said, but he's my son. I'm not going to let him live on the street. Sylvia raised an eyebrow. Catherine, careful. Don't let him into your house again. No, I said firmly. Not in my house. Never again. That door is locked to him as a resident. But I need to know he has somewhere to lay his head. The trust provides for rent payment, right? It does, Sylvia confirmed. Directly to the landlord. No money in Marcus's hand. Up to $1,200. But he needs to find the place, and he needs to have a job to cover the rest of the expenses. Because the trust only gives a small monthly allowance if he's working. Great, I said. So that's it. When he gets out, he'll have to figure out finding a place and a job. If he finds it, the trust pays the rent. If he doesn't, he goes to a shelter or a state halfway house, Sylvia completed. And that might be the best thing for him, Catherine. Learning to survive without Mommy's safety net. I knew she was right, but it was hard. September came fast. His release day was set for a rainy Tuesday. I didn't go pick him up. That was the hardest thing I did. My instinct was to go there, be at the gate, take him to lunch. But I remembered Sergeant Robinson, Sylvia, everything. If I went to pick him up, I would be saying everything was okay, that we had gone back to normal. And we hadn't. I sent the lawyer, Robert Chen, to meet him. Robert was going to hand a folder to Marcus. Inside the folder, there was no money. There was a copy of the trust rules, a list of cheap hostels, a subway card with $50 credit, and a cheap prepaid cell phone with credit for a month. And a letter from me. Marcus, welcome back to freedom. I'm not there because our relationship has changed. You aren't the child I need to protect anymore. You are a 35-year-old man who needs to rebuild his own life. Mr. Chen will explain how the fund I created works. Read carefully. If you follow the rules, you will have help paying for a roof over your head. If you don't follow, you're on your own. My house remains my sanctuary. You do not have permission to go there. Not yet. We will meet in public places when I am ready. I love you. And because I love you, I am letting you walk on your own 2 feet. Mom. Robert called me later that day. He's out, Mrs. Williams. He read the letter. He cried a little, not gonna lie. He asked if you were in the car. I said no. He took the folder, said thanks, and went to the bus stop. Did he seem angry? I asked, heart in my throat. No, Robert said. He seemed scared and resigned. I think he finally understood the well has run dry. I hung up the phone and watched the rain falling outside. Marcus was loose in the world. No money, no home, with a dirty record. The only thing he had was the chance to prove he could be a decent man. Now, the real test began. Marcus's first few weeks out of jail were quiet, too quiet. I confess to you, I checked my phone every 5 minutes. I looked out the living room window every time a car drove slowly down the street. I had installed those security cameras connected to my phone, and I caught myself looking at the app in the middle of the night, just to make sure no one was prowling around my porch. Fear doesn't go away fast, you know? Even with him out, even with him saying he changed, body memory is a stubborn thing. My back didn't hurt anymore. My lip had healed a long time ago, but when I closed my eyes, I still felt that shove. But Marcus didn't show up. He didn't call. He didn't text. I heard things through Sylvia. As the trustee, the fund administrator, she was his only financial contact. He's at a cheap motel on the edge of town, Sylvia told me on a Wednesday while we were having tea. It's an ugly place, Catherine. One of those that rent by the week, but it's what the trust money allows for now, since he still doesn't have a fixed lease. And is he looking for a job? I asked, trying not to show too much anxiety. He is. He sent me proof. He went to 5 interviews this week, but with a dirty criminal record. Domestic battery and theft. Doors close, right? I sighed. It's the price you pay. Yeah, but he's trying. He called me yesterday to ask if the trust paid extra bus fare for him to go to an interview far away, on the north side of the city. I authorized it. It was only $4. I shook my head. My son, who once drove a brand new car and wore expensive suits, was now asking permission to spend $4 on a bus. It was sad, but it was necessary. A month passed, October 2025. I was at the supermarket in the produce section choosing tomatoes when my phone rang. It was Marcus. My heart skipped a beat. I took a deep breath, counted to 3, and answered. Hello? Hi, Mom? His voice was tired, hoarse. Is everything okay with you? Everything's okay, Marcus. And with you? Getting by. Mom, I got a job. I stopped picking tomatoes. You did? Where? At a distribution warehouse. Night shift, loading trucks, organizing boxes. It's heavy, minimum wage, but it's on the books. I felt a smile form on my face, a real smile. That's great, Marcus. Honest work. Yeah, the manager knew about my record. I was honest with him. Said I messed up, paid my dues, and needed a chance. He said if I miss a day or come late, I'm out. But he gave me the spot. Then grab that spot with both hands, son. There was silence on the line. Then he said, kinda awkwardly, I wanted to see you. If you want, of course. Mr. Chen said I need your authorization for us to meet. I wanted to buy you a coffee, with my first advance. I hesitated. Was I ready? Was it safe? But then I thought about the pawn receipt, the letter he wrote me from prison, his effort in getting this manual labor job. Okay, I said. A coffee, but in a public place. And quick. Of course, Mom, wherever you want. We set it for the following Saturday at 10 in the morning at a coffee shop inside a busy shopping mall. Neutral ground, lots of people around, security. I arrived at 9:50, sat at a table near the exit, back to the wall, so I could see the whole room. New habit I had acquired. At 10 o'clock sharp, I saw him arriving. My God, how he had changed. The Marcus who walked into the coffee shop wasn't the arrogant Marcus who thought the world owed him everything. He was thinner, hair cut very short, wearing simple jeans and a clean but worn polo shirt. He walked with his shoulders kind of slumped, without that owner-of-the-world posture he always had. He saw me, hesitated a bit, and walked over to the table. He didn't try to hug me. Stopped in front of the chair and asked, Can I sit? I pointed to the chair. Sit. He sat. Kept looking at his hands on the table, calloused hands, short nails. Hands of someone who was carrying boxes. You look good, Mom, he said, without looking me in the eyes. I'm fine, Marcus. Life goes on. He nodded. I ordered a black coffee and a muffin for you. They should bring it in a bit. Thank you. We stayed silent for a minute, a heavy silence, full of everything that had happened between us. Then he put his hand in his pocket and pulled out a white envelope, placed it on the table, and pushed it towards me. What is this? I asked, without touching the envelope. It's my first restitution payment, he said. The judge ordered me to pay, I know, but I wanted to hand it to you personally. It's $200. It's little, I know, but it's what was left after paying rent for the room and food. I looked at the envelope. $200. He owed me thousands. He had robbed me, tried to extort $55,000. Those $200 were a drop in the ocean. But symbolically, it was a mountain. I took the envelope. Thank you, Marcus. I'll deposit it. No, you don't have to. No, keep it for yourself. He needed to pay. He needed to feel the weight of paying. The waiter brought the coffee and the muffin. Marcus took a sip of his coffee and finally looked up at me. Mom, I feel so much shame every day. I wake up in the morning in that little rented room, go to work, carry weight until my back hurts, and I think, how did I let it get to this point? I had everything. I had education, I had support, I had talent, and I threw it all in the trash because of gambling. I drank my tea and looked at him firmly. You threw it away because you thought you were smarter than everyone else, thought the rules didn't apply to you. I know, he said softly. I thought easy money would solve my problems. But easy money is the most expensive thing there is. Are you going to the meetings? Gamblers Anonymous? I am. 3 times a week. It's mandatory for parole, but I would go anyway. Hearing the other guys' stories, there are people who lost much more than me. People who lost their family forever. I still have hope that I didn't lose you forever. I took a deep breath. Marcus, you didn't lose me as a mother. I will always be your mother. But you lost my trust. And trust is like glass. Broken, we can even glue it back, but the crack will always be there. He lowered his head. I understand. Sylvia explained how the trust works. That I'll never see the color of the inheritance money in my hand. That everything will be paid directly to creditors or services. And what do you think of that? I asked, testing him. He gave a sad smile. At first, when I read it in jail, I got angry. Thought, she wants to control me even after she's dead. But now I think it's the only chance I have. If you gave me $100,000 today, Mom, I'm scared of what I would do. I'm scared of relapsing. The trust is a safety net for myself. That surprised me. He was admitting his own weakness. That was new. "I'm happy you see it that way," I said. We talked a little more. Trivial things. The weather, traffic, his job. He told me he was sharing a bathroom with 3 other tenants in the place where he lived, that the food was bad, that he missed my cooking. I didn't offer to cook for him, didn't invite him to come home. When we finished the coffee, I stood up. "I need to go, Marcus. I have an appointment." I didn't, was going home to watch TV, but needed to establish time limits. He stood up too, stood there, kind of awkwardly. Can I give you a hug?" I looked at him, saw the boy I raised, hidden under those dark circles and those worn clothes. "You can," I said. He hugged me. It was a quick, respectful hug, without squeezing too hard. He smelled like cheap soap and coffee. "Bye, Mom. Thanks for coming." "Bye, Marcus. Behave." I left the mall without looking back, got in my car and sat there for about 5 minutes, just breathing. I had survived the first meeting. He hadn't asked for money. On the contrary, he had given me some. He hadn't made a scene. He hadn't tried to manipulate me. At least, didn't seem to. It was progress. Small, fragile, but progress. In the following months, we kept this routine. A meeting once a month, always in a public place, always brief. He continued at the warehouse job, was promoted to shift supervisor after 6 months because he was punctual and didn't complain. The salary increased a little. The trust, managed by Sylvia, started paying his rent in a small but decent studio apartment, far from that horrible motel. A place of his own. Sylvia told me everything. "He sends the bills correctly, Catherine. Electric bill, water bill, the trust pays directly. He never asked for a penny in hand." But not everything was roses. On Christmas 2025, he called me. Wanted to spend Christmas with me. At home. "Mom, it's Christmas. Am I going to spend it alone in that studio? Let me come over. Just for dinner. I promise I'll leave right after." I felt that pang in my heart. Christmas is family. Christmas is forgiveness. But I looked at my kitchen. At the counter where he had pushed me. At the floor where I had fallen. The memory was still there. The energy of that day was still there. "No, Marcus," I said, voice choked up. "Not yet. I'm not ready to have you inside this house." "But Mom." "No. We can have lunch at a restaurant on the 26th, but on the 25th, my house stays closed." He went silent for a while. I heard his breathing. I knew he was hurt. I knew he was feeling rejected. "All right," he said dryly. "Understood. Merry Christmas, Mom." And hung up. I spent that Christmas alone, ate turkey, drank wine, watched Mass on TV, cried a little, but went to sleep calm, safe, because I learned that my physical and emotional safety is worth more than any holiday tradition. And you know what? On the 26th, we had lunch. He was upset, yes, but he was there. He didn't go bet because he was sad. He didn't go drink. He dealt with the frustration. That, for me, was the biggest Christmas gift he could give me. Proof that he was learning to deal with no. Today it's been 10 months since he got out of prison. Life isn't a fairy tale. We didn't become best friends. There's still hurt. There's distrust. Sometimes he says something that reminds me of the old Marcus, and I go on full alert. But he is working. He is paying restitution. Slowly, but he is. He is clean. And me? I am here, in my brick house, which remains mine, with my money protected in the bank and the trust, with my dignity intact. I look back at that horrible night in the kitchen and think, it was the worst night of my life, but it was also the night that saved my life. And ironically, I think it was the night that saved Marcus's life too. Because if I had given that money, if I had given in, he would have kept digging the hole until he buried himself for good. And he would have taken me with him. By saying no, by calling the police, by protecting my assets, I forced him to face reality. I pulled the mattress and let him hit the hard floor. And only on the hard floor do we learn to get up for real. Money, folks, is a tool. It can build or it can destroy. In a family, it can be poison. But if you have the courage to set boundaries, to use your head and not just your heart, it can be the barrier that protects everyone. Marcus still has a long way to go. Me too. But at least now, we're walking on separate roads, but safe ones. And the key to my house? It stays in my pocket. And only in my pocket. Because the door to a mother's heart can always be open, but the door to the safe, that one has to stay well locked. Today, I'm sitting here on my porch, enjoying the afternoon sun. It's spring again in Chicago. The garden is starting to bloom, and the neighborhood is quiet. If you looked at me now, you'd just see a retired lady drinking her tea with a book in her lap. You'd never imagine the war that was fought inside those brick walls behind me. It's been almost 2 years since that night Marcus pushed me against the sink. Almost 2 years since I decided that no was a complete sentence. You know, a lot of people judge me. I know they do. I see it in the looks of some people at church, hear it in the comments of neighbors who don't know the half of it. They think, how can a mother have the heart to send her own son to jail? How can a mother have the heart to let her son live in a rented room when she has an empty 3-bedroom house? Before, that bothered me. Today I drink my tea and smile, because they don't know what it's like to sleep with the bedroom door locked out of fear of your own blood. They don't know what it's like to see your assets, which you sweat blood to build, go down the drain of a betting site. Last week, something happened that proved to me, once and for all, that I did the right thing. The old car Marcus bought with his work money broke down. The transmission went out. The repair was going to cost $850. The old Marcus would have called me screaming, would have said he was going to lose his job if he didn't have a car, would have made me feel guilty, saying it was my fault for him having an old car, would have demanded the money right then. You know what the new Marcus did? He didn't call me. He called Sylvia. Sylvia told me later. He called, explained the situation calmly, sent the mechanic's estimate, and asked if the trust fund covered transportation repairs for work. Sylvia checked the rules we wrote in that lawyer's office. The rule said, emergency transportation expenses linked to work can be covered at 70% upon proof. Sylvia told him, the fund pays $595. The rest, $255, is on you. And he replied, all right, Mrs. Sylvia. I have that amount saved. Can you transfer directly to the mechanic? No drama, no screaming, no manipulation. He solved the problem using the right channels, paying his share, taking responsibility. When Sylvia told me that, I felt a joy so big it felt like I had won the lottery. Not because I saved $200, but because my son acted like an adult man. We had lunch together yesterday. It was his 36th birthday. We went to a steakhouse he likes. I paid the bill, of course. It's his birthday. But the gift I gave him wasn't money. It wasn't a check. I gave him a set of professional tools. He's taking a night technical course in HVAC, heating and air conditioning. Said he wants to leave the warehouse and have a real trade. Said he wants to work with his hands, fix things. When he opened the toolbox, he ran his hand over the cold metal of the screwdrivers and smiled. That real smile of a boy that I hadn't seen in 15 years. He looked at me and said, thanks, Mom. I'm going to use this a lot. And then he took an envelope out of his pocket. Mom, this is the last payment for Dad's watch. I took the envelope. Inside was $140. It was the last installment. It took him months, paying bit by bit, every penny of the $1,240 I spent to redeem the watch. I held that envelope and felt its weight. That money was worth more than the $55,000 he wanted to steal from me. That money had sweat, had honesty, had redemption. I looked in his eyes and said, your father would be proud of you right now, Marcus. Not for the money, but for the attitude. His eyes filled with water, he nodded and went back to eating his steak. We are not the perfect margarine commercial family. I still haven't given him the key to my house. And honestly, maybe I never will. Trust, like I said before, is glass. We glued it, the piece is whole, usable, but we know where the crack is, and we are careful not to hit there again. The trust stands firm. Sylvia remains the guardian of the money. The will remains shielded. If I die tomorrow, Marcus will continue receiving his allowance, his rent paid, his therapy paid, but he will never, ever put his hand on the principal amount to throw on a poker table. This isn't cruelty. This is love. It's the love that protects him from himself. I learned that money shows who is really family and who just leans in when they see an advantage. But I also learned that sometimes money is the monster we feed. If we stop feeding the monster, the person underneath it can finally breathe. Today, I live peacefully. I have my little corner, my friends, my church, and I have my son back. Not the idealized son I dreamed of, but the real, imperfect, recovering son I have. They, the addictions, the debts, the greed, they lost everything they tried to rip from me, and still had to swallow their own pride. I protected my past, ensuring my 40 years of work weren't in vain. And by doing that, I protected my son's future. And you? What would you do in my place? Would you have called the police when your son raised his hand? Would you have locked the door? Or would you have given the money, thinking that would buy peace? Think I was too hard? Or think I did what had to be done? Write in the comments what city you're listening to me from. I read everything, you know? I like to know where my story is reaching. If you liked my story, if you learned something from my pain and my victory, please leave a like on the video. This helps the channel bring more real stories like mine. On the screen, you're seeing another story I'm sure you'll like. Click there to watch. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next story. Stay with God and protect what is yours.